We have coming up next a group of conservatives that believe the death penalty ought not be. And I know that we have, in fact, in Missouri, we've just had a large, a big story about this. We've had a couple of candidates that, a couple of candidates, I'm multitasking, folks. Please bear with me. This is, it's really busy here. In any case, let me see here. To talk about it, we have conservatives concerned about the death penalty, and Marc Hyden is with us. Marc was with us last year when we were here at CPAC. Marc, how are you?
Gary, thank you so much for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. You're very thought-provoking, so I enjoy it.
Did you hear that? Thought-provoking. Me.
Absolutely.
The death penalty, is there any circumstance under which you believe somebody deserves the death penalty?
Well, I don't believe the question should be whether or not some people deserve
Yeah, but it is the question. It is the question, though. Is there somebody, is there any crime heinous enough in your mind, if we are positive, absolutely sure that they are guilty of that crime, that we can reward with the death penalty?
I don't think there's any crime that we can ever be sure enough to give the government this kind of power.
So, in other words, if we have DNA, fingerprints, video, an eyewitness, and an admission of guilt, that wouldn't be enough in your mind?
Well, we've actually tried to increase the level of the standard that they have to meet. So we've already begun doing this. But even when they try to make these fixes with the death penalty, it still makes mistakes. And
I understand, but that's we're getting off in another whole area. I just want to know if there is a heinous enough crime, and if we are absolutely, positively sure that this person is guilty, that we can execute.
I don't believe that we can have that sureness. I really don't. And actually run a program. Occasionally you do have cases where it seems pretty obvious, but to run that on top of an imperfect program, it just doesn't work.
So your whole concern is that we might get it wrong.
That's not my whole concern, but Mike getting it wrong is actually a big, big concern. One innocent life.
But if we absolutely don't, I mean, we know it. The guy has admitted it. We've got his DNA. We've got a video of it. We've got eyewitnesses to it. We know beyond a reasonable doubt, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's guilty of raping and murdering a child. Could we execute him?
You know, I try not to play the hypothetical game because this is a real-world application with real problems. Can you give me a specific case that has this sort of surety that you're talking about?
No, I don't have a history of all of the cases. I know that we have cases where we have eyewitnesses. I know that eyewitness testimony can be faulty, but we've got cases where there's backup of video and all kinds of other bits of evidence. But I just wanted to find out if we knew for sure, if you would be willing to say, you know, he blew up a building, killed a bunch of people, innocent children, keep them alive anyway.
I would say so, because the current system is it's a terrible one that is very costly to the taxpayers and is very harmful to the victim's family members, and you still run that risk. When the government executes an innocent person, it becomes no better than the offenders that it's trying to execute.
You say it costs taxpayers more, but that's I've seen the studies that indicate that, but those studies don't cover the end-of-life costs for for prisoners that we keep for life. In other words, we give somebody life without parole. If you don't in your studies cover the cost of, you know, treating them for Alzheimer's and all of those long end-of-life diseases, then it looks like it's less expensive to keep them. But if you throw those in there, it actually is more expensive to keep people on
well, there's a multitude of studies, so each one is actually going to address a different portion of that. But I can tell you it's more expensive because the initial trial, that's usually where most of the cost is. But many states that sentence people to death, like California, they haven't executed much recently. So you're actually paying for all those costs anyway, but they're staying on death row, which is far more expensive than a general population of maximum security prison.
I could fix that. A little bureaucratic sweep, and I could move that along with a great deal of alacrity. How many people do we execute, do you know, every year?
It depends. We've actually, this last year was the second lowest amount since we reinstated in 1976. So it's usually in the ballpark 30, 40, maybe more. And Texas is usually leading the pack, and they have more faults than most states, I would say, too.
How many people did we execute last year that we have now decided we're not guilty?
I can't answer that, but I know we've had exonerations this year, and every year we do, and the number gets higher.
But how many that we executed did we get wrong?
It's hard for me to answer that because that's not the way the criminal justice system is set up. And you and I know the government doesn't like to admit its fault. So it usually doesn't go back, but many people have actually been posthumously pardoned. But that usually takes a process of 50 or so years.
But we do know it has happened. I mean, we both know it has happened. They've executed the wrong person. I just didn't think that it was so terribly often. And that, especially recently, because now we have all kinds of new crime-fighting tools. I know this because I watch TV. I watch them as they get the DNA and.
Well, DNA is only available in up to 10% of all criminal cases, and I'm sure you realize that, CSI television shows are much different than the reality of the criminal justice system.
Oh, now you're ruining the whole television filmic experience for me. I'm so disappointed. All right, so you think under no circumstances, no matter how much proof, we should execute?
If you can't have a program like this and be 100% certain that no innocent person will never be executed, and you can't make it efficient as well, and be representative of a limited government, I don't think we can stand for it.
Okay. If somebody wants more information about conservatives concerned about the death penalty, Mark, where do they go?
I would say go to conservativesconcerned.org, and if they want to talk to me personally, I recommend they just send me an email at info@conservativesconcerned.org.
All right, Mark, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, Gary Nolan Show, and we are from the Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, D.C.